Welcome, everyone. Today we're going to share a story many of you might know, but perhaps not all the chilling details. It's about Peter Falconio and Joanne Lees, a young British couple full of dreams exploring the vast Australian Northern Territory back in 2001. We'll delve into their journey, the terrifying events that unfolded, and the long hunt for answers. This isn't just a story of adventure gone wrong, it's about survival against incredible odds. Picture the Northern Territory then. Immense, red desert, hardly anyone around, a really harsh climate. You've got these huge road trains on the highways, kangaroos jumping out. It's wild, beautiful, but incredibly isolated. This was the setting for Peter and Joanne's big adventure. But this dream trip took a horrific turn on what some tragically called the route of death.
Yeah, and it's important to remember, even before this specific nightmare, that part of Australia, well, it had a reputation. It was beautiful, sure, but stories about dangers for travelers, especially in those remote spots, were already circulating. This incident just brought those fears into sharp, terrifying focus.
Right. So let's get into who Peter and Joanne were. What brought them to this remote place? Peter Falconio, born in West Yorkshire, England, September 1972. He was the second of four kids, smart, popular, studied engineering. He worked hard too, juggling two part-time jobs, bowling alley, nightclub to get by. And Joanne Lees, born in England a year later, September 73, lived with her mom and stepdad, had a half-brother, Sam. They weren't wealthy. Joanne worked part-time as a barmaid, even packed bacon to fund her university studies. People described her as kind, maybe a bit quiet sometimes. After uni, she got a job at Thomas Cook, the travel company. And they met, how else, but at a nightclub Peter used to go to. They fell in love. It was long distance for a while. Peter was studying engineering down in Brighton, like 400 kilometers away. Eventually, Joanne moved to Brighton to be with him, kept working for Thomas Cook there. What really connected them was this shared love for travel, for adventure. They'd done bits of Europe, but they dreamed bigger Asia, Australia. That was the main goal. Now, their parents, back in the late 90s, they were worried. You know how it is. News reports were coming out about tourists being targeted in Australia, kidnappings, even serial killers.
And there was that awful incident in 2000, just months before their trip. 15 tourists, 7 of them British, died in Queensland. Someone set fire to their hostel, someone who hated tourists. It was horrific.
Yeah, terrible. But Peter and Joanne, they promised their families they'd be careful, stay safe, avoid anything risky. You know, the usual promises. So their big trip started November 15th, 2000. First stop Nepal, then Singapore, Malaysia. They did hit a snag in Cambodia, got scammed, lost plane tickets, some cash, but apparently a kind stranger helped them out, got them new tickets to Thailand. They spent some time in Bangkok, waiting for money from home, planning the next leg. Then January 26, 2001, they land in Sydney, Australia. The plan was 3 months there, working on tourist visas. Joanne found work at a bookshop, Peter in a furniture store. Sounds like they were having a good time, making friends. Joanne especially was quite social. And Peter, the planner, spent his free time mapping out this huge road trip across Australia, which leads us to the van, the iconic orange van. Peter found it at a used car market, a 30-year-old Volkswagen Combi. Bit old, yeah, but low mileage for its age, 136,000 kilometers. And it was kitted out, bed, fridge, curtains, little kitchen. He even haggled the price down from $3,000 Australian to $1,800.
Pretty good deal for a vehicle like that, ready to go.
They must have been so excited. The road trip finally kicked off June 25th, 2001. They drove through Canberra, Melbourne, and then up towards Alice Springs. Unbelievably, they passed through areas already infamous for other murders, driving on what some were already calling a killer's highway, though they didn't know it.
And that's the chilling contrast, isn't it? Their youthful excitement, the dream of adventure set against this backdrop of hidden, known dangers on those isolated roads. That van represented freedom to them. That specific highway, Stewart Highway, it already had this dark undercurrent, this reputation long before they got there. The isolation was part of the appeal, but also the danger.
Yeah, the Stewart Highway. Over 2,800 kilometers long, mostly desert. And get this, only about 17 or 18 designated rest stops along that entire stretch. It's incredibly remote. Finding help or even just seeing another person can be tough. And to really set the scene for the danger, there was another incident around that time. It didn't involve Peter and Joanne, but another group of British tourists. 3 of them, 1 guy, 2 women driving the same road. This car starts tailgating them aggressively, flashing its high beams. Then it pulls up alongside, and the driver is just making these scary faces at them, really intimidating. The women pull over, probably terrified. The car drives on a bit, then just waits up the road for them. So they start driving again, and the car comes after them again, pulls alongside. And this time the driver makes a hand gesture, like a gun, points it at his own head, a clear threat.
Wow, that's incredibly menacing behavior. Just pure intimidation.
Totally. The only reason it stopped, apparently, was the male passenger woke up, saw what was happening, and just stared the guy down. The aggressor then drove off. They reported it to the police, but nothing came of it. Couldn't identify the guy or the car.
But that incident is so important. It establishes a pattern, doesn't it? Aggressive behavior, intimidation, specifically targeting tourists on that highway. It suggests someone was already active, testing boundaries, maybe escalating. It wasn't a random one-off event that happened to Peter and Joanne.
Exactly. Gives you chills thinking about it. But Peter and Joanne, they were unaware of this specific incident, just carrying on with their adventure. Sending postcards home at every stop. They camped near Uluru, climbed the rock that was July 11th, 2001. They even met another couple, Canadians named Mark and Isabel, with similar plans. They traveled together for a bit, Kings Canyon, Respin, then went their separate ways. Peter and Joanne stayed in Respin for the annual Camel Cup Festival. Sounds like a quirky, unique event. While there, Peter got the van service, dealt with some tax stuff, practical things. Joanne called her friend Amanda, apparently really excited, talking about their next plans. Darwin, New Guinea, back to Sydney, then New Zealand, still full of dreams. And then came July 14, 2001, the day everything changed. They left the Camel Cup around 3 p.m. Their destination was Devil's Marbles, about a 6-hour drive north. They shared the driving. Joanne took the first shift, and Peter. Around 6 p.m., they stopped at a place called TT Roadhouse, bought some supplies. Peter took the wheel after that stop, driving into the evening. So it's around 7:30 p.m. Peter's driving the Combi on the Stewart Highway. It's getting dark, very isolated. Then headlights appear in the rearview mirror, a car behind them. At first, probably a bit of relief, another vehicle on this lonely stretch of road, but that feeling didn't last long. The car speeds up, gets right on their tailgating, then starts flashing its high beams right into Peter's mirrors, blinding him. Peter apparently said something like, "What's this idiot doing?" Then the car pulls alongside them, matching their speed. The driver rolls down his window. A middle-aged guy, Joanne later described him as having a scary face. He doesn't signal or wave like you might expect. He just points really emphatically towards the back of their van. Peter immediately assumes something's wrong with the van. Sparks, smoke, something like that.
And that's the hook, isn't it? The manufactured problem. It preys on that instinct to check your vehicle, especially in such a remote place. It turns potential fear of a stranger into a seemingly practical, necessary stop. A very calculated move.
Totally calculated.
Yeah.
So Peter pulls the Combi over to the side of the road. The other car pulls in behind them. This man gets out, approaches Peter. He tells Peter there's a problem with the exhaust pipe, says he saw sparks, maybe it's on fire. Joanne's still in the passenger seat. She hears this, warns Peter to be careful. But she also mentioned later feeling a slight sense of relief. Initially, okay, it's just the van, not something worse. Peter goes around to the back of the van to check the exhaust, maybe have a cigarette. The stranger goes with him, and then Joanne hears it. A loud bang, sharp. Her first thought, the exhaust pipe. It burst. She turns to look towards the back of the van, but there's no one there. Peter and the man are gone from view. She turns back to face forward, and the man is suddenly right there, at her window, pressing a gun, a silver handgun, against her head.
Just terrifying, the speed of it.
He orders her to open the door. She's frozen, terrified. He gets the door open. Then he forces her hands behind her back and secures them with these crude, homemade-looking handcuffs. Black tape, plastic ties maybe. She's immobilized. He pulls her out of the Combi and forces her towards his vehicle, a utility truck. A ute, as they call them in Australia. It had a canvas cover over the back tray. She remembered seeing a dog inside the ute, too. Joanne starts screaming for help, obviously terrified. But the man shoves a bag or something over her head. Just before he did, she caught another glimpse of his face. Beard, shoulder-length hair, baseball cap. She's screaming Peter's name, asking where he is, desperate. But there's no sign of Peter anywhere. The attacker points the gun at her again, tells her he'll shoot her if she doesn't shut up. She goes silent.
The sheer terror she must have felt is unimaginable. Completely helpless.
Absolutely. And then, while she's in the back of this ute, likely bound, head covered, she hears the man dragging something heavy. It sounds like he's dragging it past Peter's van. She couldn't see what it was. She yelled out, asked him if he'd shot Peter, and the man just replied no. It seems like the attacker was busy for a few moments, maybe moving Peter, maybe trying to hide the Combi, arranging things, as Joanne put it. And in that moment, Joanne saw a chance. An unbelievable chance. Despite the handcuffs, she somehow managed to get the door of the ute open. She scrambled out, tumbled onto the roadside, and just ran into the darkness, into the sparse, scrubby bushes by the highway.
Incredible presence of mind, even handcuffed, in total terror.
The man saw her escape. He started chasing her, yelling. He had his dog with him. using a flashlight to search the bushes. Joanne ran as far as she could, then just collapsed, exhausted. She burrowed down into the low shrubs, trying to make herself invisible, praying he wouldn't find her. And somehow, miraculously, he didn't. The man and his dog searched, but they went past her hiding spot. He went back to his ute, started the engine. She saw his headlights sweeping the area, still looking. Joanne just stayed hidden, absolutely terrified. Eventually, he seemed to give up. He got back in his ute and drove away.
Leaving her alone, in the dark, in the middle of nowhere.
Exactly. She stayed hidden in those bushes for 5 hours. 5 freezing hours. It was only about 11 degrees Celsius that night. Terrified he might come back. Finally, around 12:30 a.m., she saw headlights in the distance, a big truck. She forced herself up, ran out onto the highway, waving frantically, desperately trying to flag it down. Thankfully, the truck drivers, Vince Millar and a friend, saw her and stopped. They helped her cut off those horrible homemade cuffs. Joanne, obviously traumatized, poured out the story, what had happened, pleaded with them to help find Peter. These drivers were amazing. They actually detached their trailer right there on the highway and spent the rest of the night driving around the area with Joanne, searching for any sign of Peter or the orange van. But they found nothing. No trace.
Joanne's survival was one thing, but her ability to act, to escape, and then to recall details under that immense pressure, that was everything for the investigation that followed. Without her, this might have remained a complete mystery.
No doubt. So around 1:30 a.m., Vince Millar drove Joanne to the nearest place with people, the Barrow Creek Roadhouse. The owners there, Les and Helen Johns, immediately called the police, but Barrow Creek is incredibly remote. It took the police 3 hours to get there. They arrived around 4:30 a.m., and Joanne, despite everything she'd just been through, gave them an incredibly detailed description of the attacker. About 45 years old, tall, long face, deep-set eyes, the shoulder-length hair and beard, black baseball cap, jeans, and his vehicle, a utility truck, a ute, with a canvas cover on the back. Vince Millar also gave the police a map showing exactly where he'd found Joanne on the highway. The police started the crime scene investigation at first light around 7:00 a.m. They found blood near where the van had initially stopped. Later, DNA confirmed it was Peter's blood. But Peter himself, gone, no body. Then, about 80 meters off the road, hidden in the bushes, they found Peter and Joanne's orange Combi. It had been moved. Forensics went over the van. They found fingerprints that weren't Peter's or Joanne's, and DNA on the gear stick and near the back that also belonged to a stranger.
So physical evidence of a third person was there almost immediately.
Yes, but the investigation faced huge hurdles. Roadblocks only went up around 8:30 a.m. That's 12, maybe 13 hours after the attack.
A massive delay. If the attacker knew those back roads, knew the territory, he could have been hundreds of kilometers away by then.
And the media storm started. Huge attention across Australia. But with Peter missing and Joanne the only witness, some early reports were just cruel, speculating that maybe she was involved somehow.
That happens so often in these cases, tragically. The survivor facing suspicion.
Yeah. Joanne felt immense pressure. She eventually gave a press conference to tell her side, try to clear her name, but she felt the investigation was slow and maybe that the police still saw her as a suspect. She was frustrated and traumatized and eventually went back to England. The big break came, as it often does, from CCTV. Police started pulling footage from every gas station, every roadhouse, anywhere near the crime scene around the time of the attack. And they found it. Footage from a convenience store in Alice Springs, timed around 12:30 a.m. that night. It shows a man buying fuel, ice, some cold coffee, and his appearance matched Joanne's description perfectly. The build, the beard, the hair, the cap. Even better, his vehicle was clear in the footage, a Toyota Land Cruiser Ute, 75 series, with a distinctive green canvas cover over the back. It matched Joanne's description exactly.
That was huge. Suddenly they had a face, a vehicle. Definitive proof.
Absolutely. This narrowed things down massively. Police started looking for owners of similar Toyota Land Cruisers in the area. They went from maybe 3,000 possible leads down to just 36 registered owners of that type of vehicle. But then, other setback. They showed photos of these 36 men to Joanne, and she couldn't identify any of them as the attacker.
Which is puzzling, right? She gave such a clear description, the CCTV seemed to match. Why couldn't she pick him out from the photos? Well, there are a few possibilities. Trauma can affect memory recall, especially facial recognition under stress. But maybe more significantly, perhaps the person in the photos looked different from how he looked on the night of the attack.
That's exactly what turned out to be the key later on. But meanwhile, the forensic evidence was building. Remember the blood found on Joanne's shirt? Tests confirmed it wasn't hers and it wasn't Peter's. It belonged to the attacker. DNA from that blood matched the DNA found on the homemade handcuffs they'd recovered. And crucially, it also matched the DNA found on the gear stick inside Peter and Joanne's van.
Okay, so scientifically, it's undeniable now. Same unknown male DNA profile from 3 key places: the victim's clothing, the restraints, and the crime scene vehicle. That completely clears Joanne and proves the third person, the attacker, was physically present and involved.
Right. The science was irrefutable. But the investigation seemed to stall again, until a new investigator took charge, Colleen Gwynn. She apparently brought fresh energy, reviewed everything, re-interviewed people. She recognized how crucial Joanne's memory was, despite the photo ID issue. Gwynn even flew to England to speak with Joanne again, build that trust. Then the next major breakthrough came almost by accident. May 17th, 2002. Police arrest a guy named James Heppy on a drug charge transporting cannabis. During questioning, Heppy starts talking about a close friend of his, a man named Bradley John Murdoch.
Yeah.
Heppy tells the police Murdoch owns a ute very similar to the description in the Falconio case, and then he drops the bombshell. Murdoch used to have long hair and a thick beard, but recently, he'd shaved his head completely bald and gotten rid of the beard.
Ah, there it is, the altered appearance.
Exactly. The police checked their files. Bradley John Murdoch was one of the 36 owners of similar utes they'd initially identified. But the photo they had shown Joanne was the old photo with the long hair and beard. Now he looked completely different.
So Joanne couldn't identify him because he deliberately changed his look so drastically after the attack. It explains everything.
Yes, and Heppy added more fuel to the fire. He mentioned seeing homemade handcuffs at Murdoch's place, just like the ones used on Joanne.
It's fascinating how often these breakthroughs come from completely unrelated investigations, like a drug bust. It shows how these criminal worlds can sometimes overlap.
So who was this Bradley John Murdoch? Let's get into his background a bit. Born October 1958, Western Australia. Apparently had older parents, felt neglected, had behavioral issues growing up, got involved with gangs, drugs, described as rebellious, aggressive, took a darker path, as sources put it. When he was 21, back in 1980, he caused a fatal car accident. Served time for vehicular manslaughter. After getting out, he worked as a mechanic, even got married. But the marriage only lasted 18 months. His wife Diane left with their son, citing his abusive behavior, and cut off contact. He went bankrupt in '83. Seems like things spiraled. He got heavily involved in drug trafficking, made money, moved around, lived in Kununurra for a while, known for being racist, having a violent temper. There was another incident involving a shooting that got him 15 months in prison. Later, he moved to Broome, kept trafficking drugs. That's where he met his girlfriend, Beverly Allen, and this associate, James Heppy.
So, a long history of violence, crime, instability, and significantly involvement in drug trafficking through remote areas. It fits a certain profile.
It does. Now, the final piece of the puzzle fell into place on August 22nd, 2002. Murdoch gets arrested again by a different police unit for a completely separate crime, allegedly sexually assaulting a mother and daughter who were his neighbors. Colleen Gwynn hears about this arrest immediately. She contacts those police and asks for new photos of Murdoch, showing his current appearance, shaved head, no beard. They take the photos. Gwynn puts Murdoch's new photo into a lineup with 11 other similar-looking men. They show this new photo array to Joanne Lees in England. And this time, she identified him immediately, positively. Bradley John Murdoch was the man who attacked her and Peter.
That must have been an incredible moment for the investigation. Vindication for Joanne, too.
Absolutely. And the final confirmation, DNA tests. They get Murdoch's DNA sample. It's a perfect match to the unknown DNA found on Joanne's shirt, on the homemade handcuffs, and on the gear stick of Peter's van. Case closed, forensically speaking.
So now they have the positive ID, the forensic match, the corroborating details from Heppy. The path to prosecution looks clear.
It should have been, but there was another twist. The legal process got complicated. Murdoch first went on trial for that sexual assault case involving his neighbors, and incredibly, he was acquitted, found not guilty. Sources don't really explain why, but he walked free on those charges.
That's surprising, given the circumstances. But it highlights how different cases, even with the same defendant, rely on different evidence and standards of proof.
Right. But Colleen Gwynn's team was waiting. Literally, as soon as he was acquitted on the assault charges, they rearrested him. This time, for the abduction and assault of Joanne Lees and the murder of Peter Falconio. Murdoch denied everything, vehemently, maintained his innocence right through the trial. The prosecution argued the motive was tied to his drug trafficking. They suggested Murdoch feared Peter and Joanne had seen cannabis hidden in his ute when he stopped them. Maybe they'd report him. So he decided to silence them permanently.
A plausible motive given his known activities and the location, eliminating potential witnesses.
The trial was long, complex, but on December 13th, 2005, the verdict came in. Bradley John Murdoch was found guilty of the murder of Peter Falconio. He received a life sentence with a minimum non-parole period of 28 years. Justice, finally, for Peter's family and for Joanne. But there's still a dark shadow hanging over this case, a deeply unsettling loose end. In April 2017, years after the conviction, police received an anonymous letter. The writer claimed they'd helped Murdoch dispose of Peter Falconio's body. They said the body had been dismembered, put into 2 bags, and dumped somewhere. The writer insisted they didn't know it was a body at the time, just thought they were helping Murdoch move something.
Yeah.
And crucially, they didn't reveal the location.
Chilling and so cruel for the Falconio family, not knowing where Peter is.
Exactly. The letter writer has never been identified. Peter Falconio's remains have never been found. It's a piece of the puzzle that's still missing. This whole story, Peter and Joanne. It's just such a stark reminder, isn't it? Danger can hide anywhere, even in beautiful, wide-open spaces. It really hammers home the need for vigilance, for trusting your gut when you travel, especially off the beaten path.
It really does. And it makes you think, how do we balance that human desire for adventure, for exploring the unknown, with these kinds of inherent risks? What can we learn from survivors like Joanne, from her incredible strength?
Her strength and quick thinking under that kind of terror, it's almost unbelievable. Her escape, her detailed descriptions, without them, Murdoch might never have been caught, especially with Peter still missing.
Her testimony, her resilience became the cornerstone of justice in this case.
For anyone who follows stories of true crime, this case is particularly haunting. The isolation, the calculated cruelty of the attacker. It has echoes of those horror films set in the remote wilderness, like Wolf Creek, a real-life nightmare. So those are the details of this tragic story. What are your thoughts after hearing it all laid out? We invite you to share your insights in the comments. If you found this deep dive compelling and disturbing as it is, please do remember to like this video, share it, and subscribe to the Horror Docs channel. Your support really helps us keep bringing these important, often difficult stories to light. We'll be back soon with another case. Until then, please stay safe, look out for each other, and take care. Goodbye.